Hello, welcome to the Spiritual Underground Podcast. This is Dan coming to you from the studios at DTM Woodwork. As always, something I picked up just lately, if you're just now tuning into the Spiritual Underground Podcast, what this is a recovery podcast. We've delved into quite a bit. It's based on mostly 12-step recovery, but we have some people in here talking about other types of recovery too. I've had a yoga studio owner talk about finding her true voice and recovering her true spirit through the practice of yoga. I've had somebody in here on divorce recovery and recovering from that kind of trauma, which I can certainly relate to in my own life. But primarily what we're doing here is talking about 12-step recovery and coming out of the addiction cycles of drugs and alcohol. So that's what this podcast is about. A couple little commercials. You can go to spiritualunderground.org. You can see show notes there. You can see pictures of the participants when they choose to be photographed. As always, we protect people's anonymity at the level they wish it to be protected. You can also find a contact me page on there. So if you want any information, or if there's, I'll make myself available that if any of this is up your alley, something you need to talk about, you can email me through that. DTMWW.net is my website where I do some handyman work and some woodworking. Needing that in the Louisville metropolitan area, you can contact me. Darren Frank's music is wrapped around this. Darren's one of us. He's in our family. We miss him. He's laid up in a recovery, not that kind of recovery center, physical recovery after some health issues he's going through. He's on a path of recovery in that neighborhood, but it's his music that's wrapped around this. Jesse is also been played a part of that. So says you hear his father's harmonica in there, Gino's harmonica. And finally, 12-Step Spiritual Recovery. That's a book by James Christopher Cohn. It can be found on Amazon. 12-Step Spiritual Recovery. It's I will say it as I do. It is the great compendium, the magnum opus of the 12 steps. It is a Bible kind of deal where it spells out all of a way to go through an optimized way of going through the steps one by one and while you're doing it. And you can do that by yourself. You don't have to. It also reaches out to people who are not in the alcoholic addict world, who do not find themselves in a traditional 12-step ism. And deeper dive for those who are into already in 12-step fellowships. So we will move on from there. Have a guest in today. We've got kind of a little run on guys who have hit this 1 year mark lately, and I totally love that because it's cool when you have somebody who's been in for a while and they've got some time under their belt, and their stories are valuable too. But for somebody who is like struggling, who is looking through the window and wondering if what they can do about their problem, they're sitting there wondering if they have an alcoholic issue, or maybe they know it and they don't know what to do about it. These guys, at these 1 year stories are a little more relatable to a person like that. And the other point I want to make is it doesn't take that long to get well around here. These guys have been like at 1 year, they've had their transformation 6 months ago probably. So this is, we could actually do it earlier than this, but that 1 year mark is kind of a cool little mile marker in the path. And so today Tom is here, and I remember, I still remember the first day that I met him. He may or may not talk about that. I'm going to leave that part of the story out, but he, I guess, I like to think of it as like people stumble into our home group meeting, and why I say that is because mostly they stumble out after experiencing the energy and the level of recovery they find there. Almost to a T, people go, wow, I found something is going on there that I have not been seeing when I go someplace else. And it was a cool winter night kind of thing that we were standing around afterwards, and I see the people in the meeting, and I know when you're new to us. And one of our fellows had recommended you come to us, maybe your sponsor.
My sponsor did, and then another one of us, Kevin, did.
Kevin, yes. So we they tapped him on the shoulder and pointed him our direction, and he don't miss a meeting very often. Something just like most of us, something pretty important's got to be going on before we're not there on a Tuesday night. So welcome to the podcast, Tom. I'm just pleased. I'm just excited as hell to have you here, man.
Thanks, Dan. I'm excited to be here too. It's this is awesome that you do these podcasts, and I was thinking about this on the way over here today. It was October when you and I had that conversation, and it was cold. I certainly remember that. We'll talk about that. It's something I'm excited to talk about, but it's neat too. It's sort of a full circle deal here. I remember when I was about, 7 or 10 days sober. I was in Gatlinburg. So right out of deciding that I was going to stop drinking, I'm on a family trip in Gatlinburg. And I spent my nights there listening to podcasts. At that point, it was early on. I think I'd gotten a chance to listen to Nick, to Chase. But it was something that kind of pulled me in right away. And I remember thinking a year ago, boy, it'd be cool one of these days if I can do that. So it's awesome, man. It's awesome to be here doing it.
That's a very interesting take. I never think about. Thank you for that, because that blesses me. That touches me. That like you just sit there early sobriety, going, man, maybe someday I would.
Yeah.
And those kind of carrots are pretty cool too, right? I mean, it goes, hey, that gives me just one more little pin in my cushion to say, hey, yeah, I do want to do this.
Exactly right.
So we always start out with a guy's sobriety date.
October 5, 2018.
Awesome. Yeah. That's been just a minute ago. Last month you were in the big celebration, right? We had a giant bunch of people in our meeting.
Yeah.
Spoke a little bit about Mike's his experience there, and my experience at his church, which is your church.
It is. Yeah.
Right after that. So I like to talk about starting early, because I always want to go back to childhood stuff, and we're not under time restriction here, so we just I like to start back there and where you grew up, what your family life was like, and we'll just
go from there.
Let the story evolve.
Sure.
You know your story pretty well. That's one cool thing about these guests I have on my show. They know their story.
Not only that, Dan, but if there is anything that, if you ask me, and I'm not working a program, I'll be a self-proclaimed expert in just about anything I think would impress you. But putting that aside, I certainly am probably the best expert in myself. In having an ego-driven disease, I've spent a lot of time thinking about myself and how different things have affected my life. But sure, I grew up in Okolona, which is in southwest Louisville. I bring that up only because around age 11, my middle school years, that changed, and so I'll kind of get into that. But my father was a medical radiation physicist, and so in other sort of terms, he's sort of a rocket scientist in the medical field.
Yeah.
And that, again, too, has kind of a bearing on my life. But my dad passed away in January 2 years ago, coming up on this January. It was a difficult time for sure. But my dad was a teetotaler. My dad never drank. Earlier in his life, he might have had a cocktail here or there. But I spent my entire youth with my dad being told of the dangers of alcoholism. My dad grew up in Whitesburg, Kentucky, which is southeast Appalachia. My grandfather was a preacher and a coal miner. And so he grew up in very, very rural Kentucky. He would tell me stories about when he was 12 or 13, and I guess we don't video this, but for imagery, I'm not a very small guy. I'm 6'5", about 270 pounds. My dad was my size.
Yeah.
And so at 13 even, he was a real big guy, and he would tell me stories about how I had a great uncle, his uncle, my dad's father's brother, would come to the bottom of a hill. They lived on a hill, and he'd come to the bottom of this hill drunk, yelling for my grandfather to come pick him up and take him home. Well, my dad, being one of the best people I ever met in my life, would get up at 4 a.m. at age 13, pick up this 200-pound man, throw him over his shoulder, walk a mile down a railroad track, throw that guy on the ground, and then walk back home. That would happen for a few years, and then being rural Kentucky, they lived on this creek, but they call it a creek, is a stitch off a river, 30, 40 feet deep, and that guy drunkenly was coming across a swinging bridge one night, fell in the river and died.
Oh, really?
Drowned to death. My dad had a nephew, I guess that's it'd be my first or second cousin, but my dad's sister's son was 12 years old, and he grew up in the household with them, was essentially like a brother to him. Was sitting on the side of the road in Whitesburg playing, and a drunk driver came across the side of the road, ran over him and another little boy and killed him.
Ooh.
So my dad's entire youth was spent seeing the dangers of alcohol.
Some consequences around him that were
Right.
very obvious.
And my dad was also very independent and very, very will driven. And so he just decided, I'm not drinking, and I'm not going to do it, and I'm not going to be around him. My mother was a nurse and would have a cocktail from time to time, but also was a pretty devout Christian and didn't follow. Wasn't the type that was devout and then behind closed doors would go do all the stuff she said you weren't supposed to do. So I grew up being surrounded by, it's not a good thing, it's not a good thing, it's not a good thing.
Is that interesting?
Right. And so it always, to fast forward a little bit, as I was first dipping my toes into this program, and I'm looking for all the ways that I am terminally unique, right? I'm looking for why I'm not Dan. I'm looking for why I don't have to do this thing, why I get to still drink and you don't.
Where's my escape hatch?
My escape hatch, as you say it, one of those things that I would find often is I didn't grow up the way a lot of people did. I wasn't surrounded by alcohol. My parents weren't alcoholics. They didn't tell me that this was fine. Therefore, I'm fine, right? Obviously, that didn't work as we go along through the story. But so in growing up, I have two older sisters. Both of my sisters are 13 and 11 years respectively older than me.
Wow, big spread.
And so as I was growing up, I was the only little boy. And they were in high school or older. And what I found at a very young age was that I was the apple of my mother's eye. I, at a very young age, developed an ability. School was very easy for me, and my dad made a very big deal about academics. Mm-hmm. And so my dad and I had this bond, which was this sort of academic bond. And so I always sort of perceived, even through both of my parents, and I later found out from my sisters as well, that I was sort of the favorite. Okay. Well, it would, as I was growing at a young age, I started to figure out whether I was or I was not, I adored the attention. It was what I was based on. And so I started, Dan, feeling like I had to behave in ways that would get that attention. Now, I didn't like bad attention. I wanted your praise. Yeah. And I use that word carefully because at this age it was just praise. I just wanted you to think that I was special. I think by third or fourth grade, I think I'd won a Young Authors Award. This was curious. I was in advanced programs in fifth grade, and I'm trying to say this in a way that it doesn't sound like I'm that it's an ego trip, but by fifth grade, they wouldn't pass you through grades from fourth to sixth grade. So in fifth grade, they essentially gave me tests at the beginning of my fifth grade year, and I just had my fifth grade year. I had my favorite teacher I ever had sort of did an independent study with me, and so he would just let me. He'd just send me to the library and say, "Go give me a book report on the war of 1812," and I'd come back and do that. That's all I did. Huh. Okay.
Wow. That's here in Louisville.
What's that?
That was in Louisville.
That was in Louisville. It was at Sarah Jacob Price Elementary School. At that time, there were really only two advanced programs in the state. One was at Price, and one was at Tully. And I went to Price. There was I won the first trophy I ever won for academic stuff in fifth grade for a state spelling competition for kindergarten through eighth graders, and I came in third. I had to spell biblioclept. Good luck with that, too, by the way, but I'll bet you I'll never forget that for the rest of my life. And so I don't say any of that stuff to brag. I really try cautiously, and my sponsor, Don M., was on here. And he talks about how school was easy for him. And I'm cautious in how I say it, Dan, because I really don't want to come off like it was a bragging thing. But it's imperative to understand that what was happening was that I was not only learning that I could use that to get your praise, but it started separating me from you. Where some people set themselves aside athletically or set themselves aside in some fashion, I took that as I'm better than other people.
Right.
So I started getting that sort of at an early age. And at home, I started feeling like I was getting that. curiously enough, at that time too, I started gaining weight. I started kind of becoming a fat kid.
Oh, really?
Because where I started playing video games and books, my outside lifestyle started slowing down a little bit. When I was 11, we then moved to Cherokee Road, which is the Highlands in Louisville. And it's sort of important, I think, to look at that only in the idea that that's not a place where kids are. They're nice old homes, but it's retirees and college students,
aging mostly people,
or they're apartments now.
Yeah, right now.
And so I further was sort of isolated. I didn't really play with people. I didn't really have any friends.
Kids running around the neighborhood to play with, that kind of thing.
There was no neighborhood. I'm there on Bardstown, where I'm on a busy street, so there's no neighborhood, and so I'm just left to my vices. I struggled through middle school, as the way I think most people did.
Socially?
Socially, very much. I was fat. It was a little awkward. I distinctly remember 3 years of middle school in sixth grade, how I behaved. And it was right around in middle school that I started figuring out that my need for your acceptance and praise trumped anything else in my life. It truly did. I have always, and I certainly started at that time believing that my self-worth and the way I feel is a direct result, not related. It is the direct result of what I believe you think about me. And it's kind of convoluted. I didn't mean for it to be, but if I think Dan likes me, I can feel okay. If I think Dan hates me, I cannot. And that is the way that I worked and still work to this day. If I don't have something, if our higher power, if my God, as I describe it, does not remove me, like my sponsor says, and I agree very much, I can't get me out of the way.
Right.
But God can get me out of the way. But if I don't do the things in the morning, in the afternoon, and at night that help God get me out of the way, I will base my life solely about how I feel.
Right.
And then that's how I determine how I feel. So by 8th grade, I had become a punk rocker. There's all kinds of little phases through my life. In 8th grade, I had long hair. I had hair down to my shoulders. And it actually came about because some of the cool kids that I knew from middle school were punk rockers. And so I'm just going to be like y'all. I'm going to look like you. I'm going to talk like you. And that's what I did. I would sort of just become whoever I thought was cool.
We had that chameleon thing.
Right. Well, you know what I've come to see, Dan? I spent so much time trying to become who I thought you would want me to be that I never knew who I was.
Yep.
And I really didn't, because after 8th grade, I mean, this was this fast. I left 8th grade. I went to high school. When I got to high school, I played football. I played football, put on a helmet. As soon as I put on a helmet, the long hair was too hot. I shaved my head. I went from white zombie hockey jerseys and black gloves and nails in the gloves to, just normal athletic wear. And I'd say from my sophomore year through my senior year, all I wore was football gear, right? And it didn't just change what I looked like to you. It changed how I talked. It changed who I talked to.
Yeah.
It changed everything. But at this point, too, as I'd mentioned, I was still pretty overweight. By the time I got to be a junior, senior year of high school, I was still one of the popular kids, but it was purely as a function of my capability to sort of insert myself into those circles. I can tell you looking back that I don't ever feel like I was myself. I don't know if I would have been accepted or not. I don't know that I wouldn't have been.
Yeah.
But I certainly didn't give that a chance.
That's interesting.
Because there's no way that my ego, that my soul, and I didn't recognize that it was an ego at that time, but there was no way that my ego can handle rejection from you if you're the cool kids. I couldn't handle it. They've had, you mentioned Jesse does his music on here, right? And I don't know if Jesse has done the podcast or not, but
Yes.
I think he has. Okay. And sorry about that. I know I've heard at least on a round table. Jesse went to the high school I went to. Jesse was one of the cool kids from the musicians.
Oh,
Jesse
yeah?
doesn't remember me.
Oh, yeah?
But I remember him. And he was 2 years ahead of me. I knew who all the kids were in those facets. And the crazy thing is that with the jocks, I could be a jock. And when I'd run into those guys, I would have acted like I was musically inclined, and I can't play any musical instruments, and I can't sing. But I would have told you all about, I guess, what was that? It'd been the 90s. So anything from, Nirvana to any of the grunge age to whatever I thought music they would like, or Rage Against the Machine or Tool or any of that stuff, I would have just started regurgitating it.
Yeah. I had a split personality in high school where I was a hood part of the time and a jock part of the time. Played basketball, played sports, this kind of thing. And I could just pop my collar and roll right into there with an Izod on, or I could put on the blue jean jacket and the jeans and the boots and roll out into the hood market, and hang out with those guys, and there's just so much of those masks, I needed to be. And I really knew that I really had a transformation. That I did feel like now. I mean, back then I can't see it. I can only see it in the rearview mirror now. But it almost feels like Superman going into the damn phone booth.
Yeah,
Go and come out looking like a different dude. Okay, now I'm right. Now I can come over, and it's like I don't want you to see me when I'm not in uniform. The wrong team. I had to make sure those two things stayed completely segregated.
That's a different level of discomfort when the two worlds would collide, right? And so you have the audacity to be one of the musicians. I went to Manual, and so Manual really was kind of segregated itself in that they even had the youth performing arts school program, and you kind of had the artsy kids, and then you had the visual arts kids, and those were artsy and stoners, and then you had the musics, and then you had the MST, which was kind of the nerdy kids, and all high schools have cliques, right?
Yeah.
But then I would try to maneuver my way through all of them, because again, understand that I can't let anybody not like me.
Yeah.
Even if you're completely. Even if I don't know you, if I believe that you don't like me for any reason, my new goal in life is to figure out why and to change that, even if I have to be fraudulent and get you to change it. I just can't handle you not liking me.
Yeah. And as we talk about this, and I'm thinking it just crossed, I don't remember watching other people do, I didn't have a buddy that swapped teams with me. Right. It seemed like those guys was always those guys.
Right.
And these guys were always these guys.
Sure.
But I found myself trying to find out, I guess what it was, I probably didn't feel like I fit in anywhere.
Right.
And I was trying to find, trying to fit it and then trying to fit in everywhere.
And, let me backtrack on all of this that I'm saying that I hope comes across. And it's important to go back to about my youth. My parents, I don't believe, actually favored me. I don't believe that a lot of these things that I say in high school and in middle school were actually the case.
Yeah, right, yeah.
I perceived them that way.
Yeah.
All right. I then based my decisions on those perceptions, but as we've heard before, but I marry very much that what disease I have, and that's why I believe I've been an alcoholic my whole life, is I have a disease of perception.
Yep.
I just don't see the world right.
Right. Well, for instance, we had Anthony was in here, and he had two very much older siblings, and it's interesting to sit because I get to sit here and I hear all these different stories, and then I to call them bell ringers when things ring true of multiple stories, and because if your brothers or sisters, or your two sisters, right? Once they're older and they're kind of self-sustaining, right? I mean, they're no longer, but when you're little, you were probably getting all that attention, and that made you evil. That's the perception thing of that. I must be the favorite because I'm getting all this attention.
Right.
But really it's just a function that the other two have moved on. Like my kids are in the house right now, 14 and 15, and I don't know what the hell they're doing.
Right.
If they need something, they'll let me know. Otherwise, I don't. But when they were little,
sure.
Or if I had a little one in there, it'd be a whole different story. That one would be getting some attention.
But and so when I might have had two siblings, but when Santa came, Santa just came for Tom.
Oh, yeah, right.
When birthdays were big deal, birthdays were just big deals for Tom.
Right. Yeah.
And they made it a big deal about me. So imagine even your siblings are basically like parents when it comes to that stuff.
Well, there's a baby of the family aspect of things, and it's
right. So, but again, a lot. I have made sure, not only through amends, but I find it, a responsibility to telling these stories that nobody had anything to do, from my perspective, with who I am or how I see the world other than me.
Yeah.
I mean, this is me that has done this. So I get through high school. I find out that aside from academic success, that I was pretty good at football. I was a honorable mention All-State as a defensive lineman by the time I was a senior. You get me drinking enough and out, and then by that point I was All-American. But with all honesty, at that point I was in the Hall of Fame and all kinds of good stuff. But truth be told, I had some marked success in high school. And so add with the academic success to the ego, the belief now that I've got some athletic success to it too. Yeah. And then I played at Manual High School. So without trying to dissect myself too much, if you're an all-state performer at Trinity High School, you're on the list. Welcome to being one of 700 of them, right? At Manual High School, they're better now, but back then I was the first one they'd had that wasn't a kicker in like 15 years, right? And so again, ego just, it blows up. I'm greater and greater. I go to college. I went to U of L. Aside from everything else, I never really had the courage to leave. I had parents that helped me through a lot of stuff. My dad gave me a deal pretty early on, and if not abused, I think is perfectly fine, which is I didn't have to pay for much as long as I kept my grades at a pretty high level.
Yeah, right.
And I didn't. He basically said, if you move out and you're on your own, then you're out on your own. And I didn't have the courage to do it. Yeah, so I mean,
why would you? Right?
So I'm gonna. And again,
if I had that deal, I may still be there.
Right. Well, I didn't leave. Dan, I didn't leave till I was 29. So that gets pretty close to it. But also, another thing to touch on was my parents were. My dad passed at 75 when I was 37. So, what is that? 38. And so by the time I'm 18 years old, he's already 56. They've already raised 2 other kids. They're just tired. And so I had learned early on, backtracking a little bit, my eldest sister, who also happens to be a law partner of mine, flew straight 24/7. She never got in trouble. She's the typical firstborn child. She was the responsible one. She was like having a second mom, okay? My middle sister was your typical middle child. She was wild. She was rebellious. She brought home the guy that drove the motorcycles, drove my dad crazy. And at a very, very young age, I figured out, well, what my middle sister does looks fun, but I don't like the spankings, and I don't like the grounding. And what my older sister does, she doesn't get spanked for, but that looks boring as hell. Well, why don't I just do what the middle sister does and act like the older sister, and I get best of both worlds? And I did that for a long time.
Yeah,
I sort of very early on intuitively knew what we either know or develop as alcoholics and addicts, which is that ability to Jekyll and Hyde, that ability to act like everything's fine and I look perfectly fine on the front, and behind you I'm stabbing you in your back left and right, right? So when I go to college, I end up, I was a heavy guy, and as an aside note, I consider a benchmark of my sobriety my ability to get on a podcast and tell anybody that at any point in my life I was a fat kid, and I was fat. That was the most repulsive thing for me to have the ability to. I'd rather tell you I was a drug fiend than tell you that I used to be fat and lost 100 pounds.
Wow.
Which a lot of people hear that and you'd say, well, that's commendable. That's fantastic. To me, it was, you just think I was fat. You have any negative impression of me at any point, right? So that happens to me in college.
I didn't know that.
Well, and I didn't. That sincerely, Dan, is something that I clam up about. Yeah. A lot of these guys kind of in our core circle, when I told that, they were like, oh my, really? Yeah, really. It's one of those things, as we talk about sort of that child that we had inside of us before all this crap starts getting built on top of it. I hated that kid. I hated who I became when I was 18, 19 years old. And so I just acted like he never existed. What happened with that there then is I started getting a little bit of attention from the opposite sex. So now all of this stuff starts coming in and my ego's inflating. And the reason you haven't heard a lot of drug and alcohol stuff up to here yet is there really hadn't been much. I smoked some weed, and I say it that way, when I was in middle school, but I didn't get high. This isn't a Bill Clinton, I didn't inhale. I probably really didn't inhale because I was so worried about getting caught by my parents that I actually just acted like I was smoking weed with those kids. Remember, you thinking I'm the cool is the most important thing in the world to me. So I'd hang out with you, and then there were a few times in high school that I ran with guys, and they'd come over to my house because I'd have these kids at my house drinking, and then I didn't drink because I was too scared. Somebody had to be sober. Funny story about that. One day, my dad wakes me up to let me know that one of those guys I was friends with was naked in our living room on a Papa John cover, obviously very drunk. And then I got to ride with him to a family reunion in Jellicoe, Tennessee, which is 4 hours away, and he didn't say a word. Just dead silence for 4 straight hours. It was worse than any hangover I might have ever had.
I remember some of those.
Right. So somewhere around 20, I go on spring break, meet a few friends that are into things more than drinking. And for the first night I tried any drugs, I took ecstasy. And
that's a nice opener.
What's that? Right.
That's a nice opener.
That was where I started. And I'll never forget.
It's a gateway drug.
Yeah, right. I'll never forget. About an hour and a half into it, I'm like, this doesn't work. Why are people doing this? This is stupid. And then I walked into a nightclub, and I don't know if it was the chicken or the egg, but it kicked in. And when it kicked in, I was off to the races. I can distinctly remember by what most people would have called the end of that night, that everybody else passed out, and I was still driving around in my car, still high and still wanting to go. We talk about some of us sort of lose control at some point. I never had it. The minute that I felt like a drink or a drug really started impacting me, I never wanted it to stop. Because what happened was that, to me, that need for acceptance, that need to feel like I am loved by everyone, I had it. The lenses would come over my eyes depending upon whatever drug I was doing. And when I did that, now I actually believed that I was cared for and liked the way that I wanted to be liked. Okay? So for about a year or two there, I ran with who I would say are some really, really bad people. And I won't use any names, but I could if I chose to, because they're all dead. Anybody from, what you would truthfully call gangsters, people that were really high-level drug dealers, not to the level of cartel, but not too far off of it. And here I am. I've described to you my history, right? Who I grew up as. Yeah. None of that is my life. It's foreign to me. But because I perceived that those guys were cool, and because I perceived that you guys thought those guys were cool, I got to be one of those guys. So I would run with these guys, and there was always this dissonance. There was always something wrong, because whereas it was easy for them to just beat somebody up for looking at them funny, there was something in my mind saying, you probably shouldn't be doing that. That's not the right thing to do. But I don't care. I got that little voice in my mind that says, Tom, don't do that. Yep. It's taken away from.
It's a bell ringer here too. Yeah. For going, you probably shouldn't be doing this. Probably shouldn't be. But it got overridden.
It's overridden. At that point in time, it was overridden by my need to be accepted. I would say for about a year or two, I ran with those people, and I did that stuff. And minus heroin, any drug you can imagine, minus needles, any way that you can imagine, smoked, snorted, weekend long benders, it was with regularity. I say weekend long because even throughout all of my madness, my Monday through Friday, I managed to go to school, and I managed to keep pretty decent grades, minus I had a bad semester where this was back. They used to mail your report cards in. And so for about 6 months, I guess either a semester or two, I'd ride around with friends and smoke weed all day and didn't go to class. And so what would happen was I would get that mailed in report card, and I'd go in, and a friend of mine had a scanner, And so I'd take it, and he would change the grades on it. And then my parents would see it, and they wouldn't say anything to me. Well, one time I wasn't slick enough, and they mailed it before I got home, and my dad got it, and I had failed 3 classes. It's really hard to pass a class if you go on the first day and never go back, including any of the tests or anything like that. So you don't withdraw from the class, you just fail it, which is what I'd done. And my dad gave me an ultimatum and said, that's your get out of jail free card. You can either go get a job, or you can get your grades back up. Well, I got my grades back up. And for a brief period of time, for about 2 or 3 years, I was probably at that position where the book talks about I could have stopped in time. Because I did. I put a plug in the jug. I got real heavy into fitness. I got real heavy into my school. I went and took survey courses at Cornell up in New York and Manhattan. And then those things together, I decided I was going to go to law school. And they ended up getting me a scholarship into law school, which is it was sort of a nice credit to myself that I had gotten off the deep end and then had pulled myself back. Well, alcoholism is a pretty pervasive disease anywhere, but you see it a lot in lawyers. And again, I don't know if it's chicken or the egg. I don't know if our egos bring us to the table, and then we all see so many of us drinking and we drink. Like I told you, I'm firmly a believer that I was an alcoholic before I ever took a drink. But either way around it, law students are that way too. And so when I got into law school, all of this attention that I had put on fitness and I call it bodybuilding, but I don't want to send the image of like I was, in competitions or anything. But I was that guy that just as obsessive as we can get over any of this stuff. I weighed all my food. I wrote down every calorie I ever ate because that was my obsession now. Now I'm doing this thing. Well, law school, you don't really have time. You can't do all of that stuff, and that fell to the wayside.
Yeah.
Well, once the fitness part fell to the wayside a little bit, then I started wanting to drink more. Because again, I've always sort of been fidgety. I've always needed something to change how I feel. This may be I'm sort of thinking this through for the first time, but I would say until I've gotten into this program, I've always tried to change who I was. I was always waiting for that moment to get there where I thought, that's it. There we are. Okay, now I know who I am, and now I can be happy. Because each time I would make these little changes, I'm going to be more like Dan. I'm going to, there's a time when I was 25 years old and I came in here and I thought, well, I guess I got to be a woodworker now. And believe me, I can't. But I would have thought I got to, and I'd have tried that out for a while. And, oh, nope, this isn't it. That's not what made me happy. Yep. Next, and I'd move on. Well, so in law school, things started really kind of getting out of control. I got cut from a couple of classes because I wouldn't show up to class. Law school has a rule, the American Bar Association has a rule that you cannot miss more than 3 classes and complete the course. What they basically won't let you do is almost survey one. In other words, because I would do that. I did that in college, where I'd get the book, I'd get the syllabus, I'd read it, and then I'd just go take the test, and I wouldn't have to go sit through classes all the time. Law school won't let you do that. Well, that is a huge problem.
You got to participate.
Right. Well, that's a huge problem when you're drunk or you're hungover.
Yeah.
That's an issue. And so I had this brilliant idea in one of my semesters. I'm going to put all my classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I had school from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So I thought, well, that'll give me Mondays, Wednesdays, and then just a long Cadillac weekend to time on, right? Well, the problem is you give me 5 straight days of drinking and drugging and partying. I'm not ready for a 12-hour jaunt on Tuesday. Yeah. So then I just didn't go to class. And so I'd go weeks without going. I managed to keep it together enough to get through law school, but it had started to show problems. It had started to show the consequences were beginning. I was having fun, but it was apparent to people that I didn't drink like normal people drank. People would pour me a drink when we were playing poker, and if you, well, maybe you, not you, but if a non-alcoholic saw that drink poured, they would laugh at it and think that you were trying to play a joke on me, and so he's going to take a drink of that. That's going to be way too strong. No, I want the rum and Coke to basically be rum and maybe light tan at best.
Yeah.
And that's how it would start, and I'd go nonstop. I can say to this day, I don't recall ever having passed out except the first time I got drunk. I don't recall ever having passed out drinking.
That is the place where you and I differ. I was passed out all over the damn place. Yeah.
Dan,
people drag me out of concerts and drag me out of bars and drag me, and I'd be sleeping in some damn booth in the back of it or whatever. I'd overshoot the mark over and over and over again. And
so I did. It's funny, and people I know
until I found other chemicals that would override
and so that's where things would start to happen. But I do want to touch on quickly, because I know you point to this in a few of the podcasts. The first time I really remember being drunk, I was 18 years old. I was at my house. My mom and dad were out of town. My girlfriend was there, and then one of my best friends and his girlfriend was there. And we had gone to Panama City Beach the year before, and they had those old silly shot glasses that said that 2, 4, 6, 8 ounces. It was like 1 tequila, 2 tequila, 3 tequila floor. They would always have those that were cute. Well, we bought a big bottle of vodka, and I was taking 4 level 4 shots. So I don't know if those are 4 ounces of straight vodka that I was taking, but mind you, at this point, I've never been drunk. So I'm nailing those things back, and I remember 4 before I remember passing out on my floor. My friends had the brilliant idea to make me eat bread. So they were stuffing. I woke up to these chunks of bread hanging out of my mouth. So they're trying to force bread down my throat. It's a miracle I didn't die from them suffocating me with a thing of rainbow bread. but anyway, so that was my first experience with it, and I was off to the races. Once. Don, my sponsor, says, and it's true, is that sure, I had all kinds of bad consequences after the first time, and I was sick and I passed out, and I had a night there with my girlfriend that I'd ruined at 18 years old, and that's a terrible thing to have ever had happen to you. But it didn't matter, because I also remembered what I felt like before I passed out.
Yep.
And how at ease I was around you, and how good I just felt. And for a minute, I wasn't thinking about, what is Dan thinking? What is Dan like? For a minute there, I just get to be me, and I'm happy.
Yep. From now on, I'm chasing that.
Now that's that. That's the feeling. Well, I can't believe it. For 18 years, I have been wearing different clothes, different haircuts. I've been using different speech patterns. I've lied to you about who I am, who I like, who I don't like, what music I like, what movies I watch. I've lied to you about everything to get the reaction that I had in a bottle, that I could pour in a shot glass and it's there. Oh, wow. Okay, well, we're doing that now. Yeah. And so, like I said, that happened with alcohol. Well, then it just got switched over to ecstasy and cocaine and everything else that was on that. So I get out of law school. In October's a great month for me. In October of 2007, I swore into the Kentucky bar. And what that means is you go to Frankfurt and you stand with your law school class and all of your colleagues with your hand up, and you swear not to ever engage in a duel and a bunch of other ridiculous stuff. But it's all you're standing on ceremony, and you get done. And at that point, you are a practicing lawyer. You have passed the bar exam. You have now been sworn in as a lawyer. I can now walk into a courtroom and say, I'm a lawyer. Well, if there's been any reason in history to tie one on, that was it for Tom. Now, it's not any different, right, than it used to be. But so I'm at 4th Street Live, and I was a self-proclaimed club king. I knew everybody in every bar. because, again, that's extremely important. I knew all the bouncers. I didn't pay to get in anywhere. I didn't pay for my drinks. I could use drugs in the bathrooms. I'd get in fights. They'd kick the other people out because I'm extremely important in the Louisville scene, right? It's the dumbest thing in the world to say now, but it was 26 years old. That was an enormous achievement for me. Well, I'm at Sully's with a couple of friends, and as you had mentioned, what I'd learned was I could get drunk to a certain point, and then at that point, I actually wouldn't pass out. Whereas some folks would, as you'd mentioned, you might. I don't pass out, but I hit a panic, and that panic is I can't get any more messed up. Something has stopped now. Now we can only feel this good. Well, that's got to stop. I can't handle that. And so then I'd start using drugs, because if I use Coke, what would happen is I could use Coke, and then after that would allow me to keep drinking, and the feeling would change. I'd come back up again, right? So that night, I wanted to find some, and there was a guy at 4th Street Live that said all of my typical, I had my own connections, and they're all out, and that's like the worst night of your life, right? When
can't find any.
You can't find any, and it's like, what do you mean you can't find any? Everybody's got it. Nope, can't find it. Well, this guy said he did. So we leave 4th Street Live, and we're walking over toward what is now Griffiths. It's on 2nd Street, but it's right by the 2nd Street Bridge. You're over there by the Yum Center. The Yum Center wasn't there then. But I'm crossing 2nd Street, and as I'm crossing 2nd Street, I remember hearing somebody yell, "They don't have to stop," and lights out. I don't remember anything else until I wake up in a hospital bed. And turns out that I had walked onto the road in 2nd Street with another guy, this guy that as I recall best, I'm going to buy drugs with. And a car ran a red light. Now, that car ran a red light. I only know that, Dan, because I was told that later in the lawsuit that was the case. I didn't know that a car was coming or wasn't coming. Wouldn't matter if that light was green or screaming, "Don't stop."
Yeah.
I walked into traffic, all right? So, of course, being lawyerly, when I was there and I was arguing about this, of course I knew it was a red light. He ran a red light and yada, yada, yada. The truth is I just stepped out. It didn't matter. Well, he hit me at 35 miles an hour without hitting his brakes.
Wow.
The other gentleman that he hit was 2 feet in front of me. That guy went face first in the windshield. It killed him. It hit me into my left leg, spun me around the car, and I threw my elbows back into the car. The only reason I know that is you can see the front of this car. It's somewhat comical as I look back at it now, but these pictures of it, you see this massive shoulder imprint and these 2 giant elbows where I broke
It's
my
got
leg.
a Tom print?
Exactly, Dan. I broke my leg. That car lost the war. Yeah, that car, I destroyed that car. But it did. It broke my leg in 2 places. It broke what's called a transverse process in my back, which is the things that look like little wings off of your vertebra. That does nothing at all.
Except for pinch this nerve in my back right now.
Right. Well, this is up in my upper back, and it does nothing at all except tell you how dangerously close I was to either paralysis or death.
Yeah.
But it broke my leg in 3 spots. Spun the inside of it, the sort of the bone in the middle, it spun it around. So the top part of my leg was facing one direction, the middle facing another direction, the bottom facing the front direction. It was not compound, surprisingly, but so I went in the hospital. Spent about 3 or 4 days in the hospital. They put on what was called an external fixator, which looks like scaffolding for your leg. That's because your leg's in so much trauma that they can't go through and fix the bone. Well, they put that on, and then a week later, they put the rod through, and at that point, I'm now in the mend. I'm living out in an apartment behind my mom and dad's house, and my mom's bringing me out food and taking care of me. As I said, my mom was a nurse. And I laid in bed, and I thought about how crappy my luck was. You know, all my other friends were getting to go out and drink and drug and party, and I've pulled the bad lot of getting hit by a car. I say it that way because it's real important for me to see that at no point at that time did it dawn on me, maybe you wouldn't have been there if you weren't drinking and drugging, right? On the first day you're a lawyer, you end up in a hospital bed, right? So about a month goes by, Dan, without me being able to walk, and I've decided that I'm not going to drink much. I'm not going to party much. Again, throughout laying in that bed for a month, I start thinking, maybe it did have something to do with it. And the first place that I went to when I could walk was a bar. And I went to the clubs. And I went back out with my friends. It was really interesting. When I went, I had a cane. I had to go with my cane. By the end of the night, I'd lost my cane.
Yeah.
I didn't need the cane anymore because I couldn't feel anything.
Yeah.
Just as an aside here, I would challenge anybody in these rooms to go toe-to-toe with me on how many wallets, cell phones, and jackets I've lost. If I have not, and then it's probably not even fair to say debit cards. The amount of debit cards I've lost has to be in the hundreds. I can tell you at least 20 coats I've lost. I can remember cell phones lost to the point where insurance wouldn't send them to me anymore. I've had to get a car towed at least 2 or 3 times because I lost my keys, and those keys had the computer chips in them. And so you couldn't just go get a new key made, so they'd have to tow it to Ford. They'd have to make a new key. And that's a nice, sobering moment when you get your Explorer towed to Ford, and they make a new key for you, and you give them some bullshit excuse. Yeah, man. I'd blame somebody else. My grandma took my keys, and old people, and she lost the damn key. It's a real sobering moment when you come back 2 weeks later and you got the same problem again.
Do it again.
Like, I need another key. So I would continue on. That was about 27. I spent about 2-3 years there, now practicing law, drinking and drugging, and things got better for a very short time, and then they got a lot worse, which is a lot of our stories. When I tried to strong will it for a little bit, I was able to for just a short while.
Yeah, that's what the book says. There were periods of sobriety, and whether what level that really was, or if it was like total abstinence or not. But there was levels. There was times when I pulled it together and managed somehow or another, moderated whatever for periods of time for whatever reason.
But then it would just get progressively and progressively worse. I met who is now, thankfully, my wife when I was 30 years old. And I was pretty messed up the first night that I met her. I had enough wherewithal about me that she gave me a ride home. And when she gave me a ride home, it was a cold night, and I threw my jacket in the backseat of her car, and I wouldn't put it back on, and I took off. Because in my drunken mind, I'd thought, well, if she'll have to call me tomorrow because she got my coat. I woke up the next day, I was like, I acted like enough of a jackass, she might just throw the coat away. And never call me again. But fortunately enough, she did call me. And in that time, it's funny now, in talking to her, she had friends that were in that scene too. And all of those people, when she said she was dating me, kind of said, Tom, you're dating Tom. Wait, this Tom, right? Are you sure? You sure it's a pretty bad idea that you're dating that guy? And to be clear, my wife is a wonderful, spiritual, non-ism woman. She's a great person, and she'd tell all those people I see a lot of potential in him. And I'm so thankful that she did, and I'm so thankful that she stuck around because she saw a little potential, and whether that's come to fruition, I don't know. But she went through some periods of time, a long period of time, with me still using.
Yeah.
At this point, I have gone in or out of AA a couple of times. I am still trying to figure out who I am, and now that I'm an attorney, I've decided that I'm going to be this isn't an attorney, but to use Wall Street, I'm going to be Gordon Gekko. So now I'm going to be super rich, masterminded, step on your throat just to get past you kind of person. Just real great aspirations to have in life. And so I go out, obviously that first job that I had, and I was working for an attorney, I end up having to stop working for him because the drinking and drugging starts becoming evident. And I quit that job, and I'm happy to tell everybody I quit that job. And I'd have told you for years I quit that job, but I will promise you that my email to quit beat by a matter of minutes the email I was getting firing me. It was nothing more than I'm breaking up with you before you're breaking up with me.
Yeah.
All right? And it was all to save my ego so that I didn't get fired for this disease. but I was fired for that disease. I'd already had 2 meetings with that boss about this problem, and I just didn't show up to work one day. It was real clear what was about to happen, so I just, I better send this email and tell him he's the problem.
Yeah. I quit.
Screw
y'all.
Working for you sucks. And the reality was, it was me working for them was awful for them. At this point, my wife and I are together, and we find out what is now almost 9 years ago, 9.5 years ago, that she's pregnant with my son. And that was going to be it, Dan. So I'm partying through college, but I'm going to get to law school and I'm going to straighten up. Mm-hmm. That didn't work. And so then I get out of law school. It was school. It was school that was the problem, not me. Well, that didn't work because I became a lawyer, then I had a little bit of money and I had a whole lot more freedom. So then that picked it up. Well, then when I settled down with this woman, that's going to make it stop. So I settled down with her, but that didn't make it stop.
Yeah, we keep on drawing these lines.
Right, new lines.
And we cross them, and we cross them, and we cross them.
Exactly, new line. So then I get with my wife and I commit, and we're going to be together, and that doesn't stop it, but we're just dating. Once I'm getting engaged, I'm going to settle this down, then we stop. Then she gets pregnant with my son. Well, now I got a kid on the way, so there's no way. Well, hold on now, but I've got 9 months, so we're gonna tie one on for this next 9 months because he's not here. What's he gonna know, right? So we do that, but it doesn't stop, and so she moves in with me. Well, that's gonna slow it down. Doesn't slow it down. I've always been. I would tell you that I was a binge drinker. I'd tell you that I didn't drink all week and I didn't use all week. And that somehow I was fortunate about that, but my iron will, I had been able to do that. And that's just not the case. The reality is, by the time this had progressed in me to the point where I would have been using all week long, my wife was there. And my wife just wouldn't tolerate it. And there wasn't alcohol in the house. So I would, from time to time, drink at a bar or something, and then I'd come home. And she'd let me know she wasn't okay with that. And I will tell you to this day that the thing I am most proud about in my life, other than sobriety, is being a parent. And that was always so strong in me. The thought of me not being there for my children was enough to curb it a little. That through the week stuff, I could slow down.
Yep.
So my son's born. It doesn't stop. My daughter's born. And God love her. At least by that point, I wasn't fooling myself anymore. I wasn't thinking, well, the second kid's going to slow it down. At that point, I'm just starting to commit to the fact that this is just who I am.
Yeah, that's another bell ringer thing. I recall a surrender of a different type. When I got here, I surrendered, but I do remember the surrender that's just what I am. Mm-hmm. And just might as well quit fighting it, quit trying to pretend like that ain't what I'm going to be, and just surrender to that lifestyle.
Right. It's just who I am. And, listen, I help, I got a roof over your head, and hey, you remember that time you came home from work and I made you dinner? Well, I'm a pretty sweet guy. Yeah. And hey, you remember that time I vacuumed the house? Boy, I'm a nice guy.
And I got myself shined up. You look at my house, my cars, you look at me from here, and it looks all okay. Can't you see?
Yeah.
Look like me. I'm kind of, I drink, but I got a handle on things.
Well, that's, Dan, until a year and a month ago, if you had the audacity to try to shine a light on the times that I would drink or drug, that's what I shoved in your face. I got a full 401k. I'm a partner in a law firm. I got a wife. I got 2 kids. I got a pretty nice house. We got 2 cars.
Yep, me too.
What in the world are you trying to tell me I got a problem for? I don't have any problems. When the reality is a house of cards. And
just one more mask.
In a few minutes, buddy, it was all gone. It was right there, and we'll discuss that. But so things started happening when I would get every now and then, a few months, I'd go out on a Saturday night and I just didn't come home. There wasn't any foolish behavior in the ideas of an infidelity sort of situation. It was just, if I had to go home, I had to stop. And so it'd be the next night before I came home. And I have a wife that was unbelievably, Don, my sponsor, talks about the fact that the forgiveness of non-AAs is something far beyond we deserve.
Yeah. And there's also a line in there about the patience of mothers and wives.
It's amazing. What my wife was willing to tolerate, what my mom, as Dad mentioned, but my sisters, anybody in my life that was not my father, for many years. What they would let me come back and do, if somebody did to me what I did to a lot of people, I'd have written them off and told them they were the worst human being in the world. And yet somehow I get the grace of these people. Well, that would progress on, Dan, until where I would get to the point is I have this need for acceptance, and that the lies that I would tell you that would try to generate that acceptance grew more and more as my disease developed. And so if I happened to see you out in a bar, I might try to convince you that I played football in the NFL.
Yeah.
I might convince you that I was Billy, who was on here either last show or 2 shows ago, I can't remember, and I would joke about that he was an international playboy, and if he ran into somebody in Florida, he was a world-renowned playboy. Well, hell, that was going in my book. And so I was an international playboy for a while, and I was a trust fund baby. And anything I could do to make you think, oh my God, I was a plastic surgeon. Anything that could make you think, oh my God, that guy's different. That guy's better than all these other people. That's what would give me the praise, and you would give me your attention. That's what I needed. And then masking that with the drinks and drugs, then that stuff would make me feel that way. Hell, I'd actually think you believed what I was saying to you.
Yeah.
And I usually would help with that along the way, which I'd buy all your drinks for the night. And I'd buy your dinners somewhere, and I'd do that kind of stuff and think, well, these guys really like me. Well, you're paying for everything. Of course they're going to, I'm telling you, I played football for the New England Patriots, and you're over there going, that guy's full of shit. I know he didn't play, but he's going to buy all my drinks all night. Keep telling him he will. So that stuff grew more and more, and it started becoming more and more unwieldy. I couldn't keep the lid on how crazy, frankly, any other ways I'd say this was getting. So fast forward into October of 2018, I say it's fast forward. There's a long laundry list of those kind of stories that I can tell you about this. And in October of 2018, Dan, this wasn't much different than any other drinking consequence I'd had, save a couple of small things. I'd been going to AA for a couple of years, but not seriously, with no intent on being sober, and with only one reason, and that was to shut all those people that are giving me that grace and that solace and that kindness, to shut those people up. That was it. I'd just go on a Monday night to my sponsor Don's meeting, and I'd go there, and I'd say what you needed to hear, and I talk for a living, so I can listen to what people say. And as we've already made clear, I'd spent my life parroting and listening to what you. So I can sit in an AA meeting and tell y'all what you need to hear, and that's what I thought you cared about, right? Boy, I wonder what Tom's going to say. Is it going to be good? Like, that's really why we're all here today. But my ego sure wants to tell me that it is, right? So I'd do that for a couple of years, and I'd go and I'd text for half the meeting, or I'd goof off. But that way, my Monday night was that, and it'd get everybody off my back. But
I'm going to AA.
I'm going to AA, but I assure you, not a modicum, not an ounce of psychological change, not an ounce of spiritual change, and no intent to do so. Right? I liked the idea of maybe I wouldn't drink, but there was no psychological change. There was nothing in me that was making what was causing me to drink to change. Not at all. So in October of 2018, I get in my mind that I can have a few beers. And I was staying at a hotel, and I'm going to go stay in a hotel, and so I'm going to go have these few beers. And, for anybody that ever doubts what this disease is or can do, I will assure you that with all sincerity, I distinctly remember me believing that I could drink a 6 or a 12-pack of beer and stop. I believed it. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean that I wanted to do it, but I sincerely believed I could put that, you and I were talking about that earlier, I can put this limit on myself. The fact that I have to put a limit on it should tell you something.
Right.
But I can put this limit on myself, and then I'm going to be able to stop. Well, the reality the book talks about, what happens is whatever, there's an amount of alcohol that you can give me. For me, the physical allergy may not trigger on drink one, but the obsession will instantly. And the problem is, once that physical allergy triggers, and once my body says, oh yeah, that feels great, keep going, I am physically incapable of stopping until something gets in my way.
Yeah.
I just can't do it. And it does not matter what gets in my way. The need to satisfy that craving becomes the most powerful thing in the world.
Yep.
And that sounds over dramatic, but it doesn't present itself that way. At least it doesn't to me. While it's happening, I'm not going, oh my God, I'm the most addicted. I don't
see myself turning into the Hulk.
Right. No, it's just well, hell, this feels good. Well, who wants to go to bed now? There's a whole city to go out. Go have some fun. It's 10:30. You don't have to be up till 6. Go have fun for 2 more hours. You'll be home by 12:30. Well, 12:30 hits. Well, who in the hell wants to go home at 12:30? Yeah. I'll keep going. Heck, I see memes on the internet, people joking about it. I'll be fine. I'll get 2 hours. I'll be that guy, right? And then the next day hits, right? But even if the next day hits, now I'm trying to think about ways to keep going and not have to stop.
Yeah, because I thought for a while like that when that allergy popped off, there was a time that I thought that was like just for this particular drinking episode.
Right.
I found later it's not. It's for, this could be a year. This could be who knows how long. It might, I don't know when the next wall is, if it's going to stop me, when that is actually going to be. Right. I thought that once I passed out at night, once I went to bed that night, then I reset. The allergy reset. Nope.
No. Well, and, I hate to... I've learned now in this last year that I sort of stopped trying to look at things my way. I look at them the way that the winners have pulled off. We'll talk a lot about how you've impacted me, Dan, but including obviously with my sponsor. And my sponsor talks about the fact that when that allergy triggers and when it drops off, it just drops off. You go from I can drink. I'm not in the situation now when we're in rooms where I try to brag about how much I can drink, but as I told you, I never pass out. It goes. Alcohol has an opposite effect on me as it does to most people. Alcohol is a depressant. You drink it, most people get tired. Whew, I've had too much. Boy, I'm getting dizzy. That's not what it does to me. It sends me through the roof. I take a few drinks, and what starts happening to me is my brain says it's party time. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. And so, but what's interesting is Don just says that once you'll hit a dropping off point where your tolerance goes from all that to nothing, and that physical allergy kicks in instantly, and one sip of it, and you might drink a half pint and be on the floor.
Yeah. I got to where I couldn't drink anymore.
Really?
And I fought it, and I would think, like a 6-pack would do me in.
Really?
But basically, it wouldn't be that I would be drunk. I would just feel it would just make me feel like horse shit.
Really?
Unless I put something on top of it.
Right.
But by itself, the alcohol just wouldn't. And I'd do that thing where I think the next one is going to be the one. I'll get over the hump with this one. I'll get over with this one and this one. But I never really could get very deep into it. And it was a weird dynamic of when it stopped. That was my stop working kind of memory of the alcohol stopping working.
It didn't. And again, that's one of those things I'm always cautious with to make sure I don't feel terminally unique. And, we say that a lot, but meaning looking for the way that I differentiate from you so that I don't have to stop, because that's the bottom line of what that is for me. Is it never stopped working for me. I'm hopeful to say that October 5, 2018 is the very last drink or drug I'll ever have. I certainly am going to do the work today to make that not be today. But I will say that if that's true, I believe that if I picked up booze tomorrow, it would quote unquote work for me. Now, what I mean is, I don't think it'd make me feel like crap. I don't know, and I sure as heck don't want to try.
Yeah, right.
But I can tell you that defining work is important, because it might make me feel different and feel okay, but the way that I behave on it is very wrong. It does not work for me. So in this night, I'd had those beers, as I'd mentioned, and I said, nope, I'm going to go out. Went out, had a whole lot more drinks, drugs, partying. Ended up pulled over on the side of a road with somebody giving me a ride home, handcuffed to the back to the side of a building. And at that point, everything's sort of running through my mind. All this I'm better than thou and holier than thou stuff. All of a sudden, things are clicking. Like, maybe I'm not, because these are things, even though I've been hit by a car and basically fired from jobs, I've lost relationships, I've hurt my family, I've hurt my friends. I'm in a permanent state of failure to launch. I'm still living behind my parents' house, yada, yada, yada. At the point that I'm now at, where I've got my own home and family and all this stuff. I'm handcuffed sitting next to a post office with police walking around me. The other guy's got drugs on him. That's a pure function of luck because it could have been me. It's not as if he had them and I just happened to be hanging out with the guy.
Yeah, right.
They just ended up in a different person's pocket this time, right? And things just start rolling through my head. And what's curious, Dan, is I tell this police officer the truth, minus the fact that you could have said those drugs were either of ours. I just told him where I was, what I was doing, where I was all night, where things were. It was a curious sort of I'm going to be honest with people moment. Well, this officer takes a little pity on me and sends me to a hospital. Doesn't arrest me. And he just says, I'm not going to take you to jail. Appreciate you being honest with me. There's a shock.
Yeah.
Spend the night awake and then go home. All right. Well, I'll tell this because I don't mind telling it. One of the things that is odd for me, Dan, is that we have a program of anonymity, and I spent a long time being anonymous, believing very much that my life and my AA life have to be separate. And the reality is that that's fatal for me. It may not be for everybody, and I understand that that's one of our traditions.
Yep.
And I could sit here and dissect and tell you about how I believe the world's better and how the world's changed, and they look at us different, right? And that we have this responsibility to change this stuff. And I think we do, but at the end of the day, I'm not trying to say a thing about the traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. But I will tell you that for me, it's imperative that I have the intertwining of those worlds.
Yep.
So, long story short, my wife finds out what I was doing that night. All right. When she finds out what I was doing that night, I also have to tell friends that I have, or friends of my law colleagues, that I've got this citation. And on that citation, it mentions having gone to a gentleman's club, being in a fight, and having drugs. Well, those are public record, and I have a job that has those things. And, even saying this into a podcast right now, it feels weird to say that when in reality is I've been honest with this about this to the Kentucky Bar Association, to any other lawyer that has ever asked about it. It's still awkward and kind of weird to say it, but I will tell you now as I'm saying this, it's cathartic. It feels better, again, from me not hiding about this stuff.
Yeah.
So anyways, I'm going to not tell on you a little bit, but use one of your lines is, I had for 37 years, I kept hitting what I would call a rock bottom. I'd get to what I'd say, and sometimes I genuinely would mean it, Dan. I would get to the bottom and say, I'm done. This is it. These consequences suck. That was it. This is bad enough. I got hit by a car. This is bad enough. My wife is out the door. She's gone. And now she's out the door and we got one kid. Now she's out the door, we got two kids. Like every time that was it. And every time I found an escape hatch. Yeah. Oh, wait, hold on. There's deeper. Let's go down further. And that would happen. This one had enough consequences wrapped around it that when I came home, I was out of my house. I was worried that I was out of a career. And I'm built to be a lawyer, man. I'm a trial lawyer. It's all I do. It's all I ever want to do. If I can't practice law, I have no career. I have no background. The house, the cars, my wife, my kids, it's all going to be gone. And I was panicked. I was scared to death, but I didn't feel any different than I had before. I didn't feel like this was the one. And, we'd mentioned that I don't see this world right. If I haven't said that now, to me it's extremely important. It's one of the most important things about my sobriety, which is I realize every day that I don't see the world right. And I have to mix that with an ego that I believe has been farmed for 37 years to think it's always right. So anytime I view a situation, I think that I know the best way to handle it. I believe I know the way. Heck, I give people advice for money. That's what I do. So you telling me I can't give myself advice when reality is I'm much better telling other people what to do than to follow my own advice. But I don't see the world as it relates to me correctly. I just don't. And so this didn't feel any different. And I do believe that if I had waited for this time to feel like rock bottom, I'd still be out there.
So if I was hearing it, it's like I found the escape hatch so many times. It's almost like the little boy crying wolf in a sense that I said, well, this time I said that was going to stop me, and I said that's going to stop me, and instead that stopped. So now I'm sitting here and going, why in the fuck do I think that's going to stop me?
Right.
Now I think it is. There's something in me that tells me it can.
Sure.
And the consequences are big because when I heard you say that, you said that because you've been trained to be a lawyer. That's where you had pushed all your chips in the middle of that table, and if you're going to take that away from me, then I got nothing. Right, well, I'm done. I got nothing left. And then my thing was the prison sentence, right? Because I said, well, when you go to jail, you lose your job, you lose your house, everything drops out. Kids, everything goes away when you do that. When you go to prison,
right?
And I stared at that, but I had a feeling. I was like, I'm not really sure that's going to be enough.
Well, that's right. So I had so much of where I was in life was vanity. It was my self-worth again. Remember, so my self-worth is directly related to what you think of me.
Yeah, I got to shine all that up.
So
man.
now that
polish it.
I'm trying to be Mr. Big Bad Lawyer. What are the fruits of that? The law firm, the fact that you're a lawyer, the cars, the house, the toys, right? That's all got to be well, you're taking it all. So now it's gone. So now not only do I not have an income and I'm not drinking and drugging, but everything that is my self-worth, you're about to take it from me.
Yeah.
And like you said, I still didn't know. So for the first, I went to a meeting. I'm staying with my mom for a few days. God love her.
That's another lovely one too, man.
Isn't it great?
It's a bell ringer. I'm back with my parents. I'm back with mom. I'm in the basement.
37 years old. Fairly well reputable attorney. I'm living in my mom's spare bedroom.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. I mean, if I was my wife, I'd have been as mad at me as she was. I probably would have been madder. But so I am. That was a Saturday, Sunday. So I'm home Sunday. Monday night, I go to my sponsors meeting. Tuesday rolls around, and at 6 p.m., I go to a meeting. I go to a meeting from 6 to 7 or 5:30 to 6:30, Dan. I can't remember which one. But whichever one I do, I get through this meeting, and when I'm done, God love her, I just don't want to go hang out at my mom's. It's just, if I do, then I don't feel like I'm making any progress to getting back home. Because sincerely, at this point, all I'm doing is ring the bells, blow the whistles, smoke screen everything that Tom always does. So I hit that rock bottom, like you said. I know how to find the escape hatch every time. Yeah. All right, I go where I'm told to go. Y'all told me to act like I'm sober. I'm going to go do that. Here's my new laundry list of promises on how I'm going to be sober. I'm going to get out of trouble with the bar. My sister's not going to be mad at me. My wife's going to let me back in the house. I go back to normal. Because that's what it is. At this point, I am not at a point where I think I want to stop. I certainly don't like these consequences, and I don't want to be flippant, but I do always say this. It always cracks me up when people say, I wish that we could just drink like gentlemen. I don't want to drink like a gentleman. I have never, in one point in my life, set out to drink like a gentleman. I never had my first drink and said, well, let's have 2 of these. These are great social lubricants. I have always wanted to drink as much as I could possibly drink. The reality, Dan, is I don't want to drink like a gentleman. I want to drink like an alcoholic. I just don't want the consequences of drinking like an alcoholic. So if you can give me that, right? If I can drink like I want to and party like I want to, and that's just not reality.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm still in that mode. I'm still in the what bells do I got to ring mode. What all do I got to show my wife? What all do I got to show the Kentucky Bar Association that I'm going to do to act like I'm sober? But be clear on those words, to act like I'm sober. Now, because I just can't wrap my brain around this idea that maybe there's a good life out there not somehow influenced with drinking and drugging.
Yeah.
Everything that was fun in my life at that point, starting at age 18, had been involved with drinking and drugging. Every football game I went to, blackout. Every music concert I went to, blacked out. Everything I went to was an excuse to drink.
Yeah.
Everything I went to was an excuse to party. I remember going to weddings, and this is funny, mostly important because I'm about to go down and speak at this guy's birthday, talk about how funny this stuff is, down in southwestern Georgia. This guy and I went to law school together, and we went to a friend of ours' weddings, and he and I couldn't wait to the reception to get drunk. So most people hear that, and you're like, well, you see, you drank before you went to the reception. Well, we did that too, but we drank during the wedding. And we didn't drink in the car before we went in the church. We sat in a church with a bottle of Jim Beam whiskey and drank during the wedding. And I don't know, so unsurprisingly, he and I both are now in sobriety. Yeah. He's in sobriety down in southwest Georgia, and here I am. But so Tuesday night at 7:30 rolls around, and I reach out to one of our brothers who I knew also because he practices law, but he'd also gone to my sponsors meeting a few times, and he's actually one of my sponsees. And so I reached out to him, and Don, who you recently interviewed, said, hey, you ought to talk to this guy about going to the Spiritual Underground. And so I said, all right, well, honestly, Dan, I ended up at the Spiritual Underground because it was 7:30. I'd already been to a meeting that day. Two things went through my mind. First thing was, hell, telling everybody I went to 2 meetings in one day instead of 1 sure is going to impress them, and maybe that'll get them off my ass. The second is, I don't want to go sit at my mom's house while my mom is not only just trying to love on me and be sweet to me, but she's going to spend the next 3 hours asking me why I was drinking and doing all this other stuff, and I don't want to go talk to you. Which is a real great way to treat somebody that is as loving and as kind as these people are in our lives, but that's just where my head was.
Yep. So
at 7:30, I come in, and we come there to our meeting, and I walk into the men's reading, and all these guys are hugging each other, and I'm like, oh, Jesus. It's great. So I walk in, but, the funny thing I see, Dan, is everybody seems happy. And I am not here. I think I've told you a little bit about what it was like, or what I was like, and what happened, and this is the beginning of what it's like now to me. I am not here to insult any other AA meetings. I've been to many over the last year in different states, on cruise ships in different countries, and there's nothing to knock any of those places. But I will tell you that we hear the phrase, if you want what we got, you'll take anything. You'll do anything it takes to get it.
Go to any length.
You go to any length, right? Well, I went to a lot of meetings and thought, I don't want what you got. You look bored. You look tired. A lot of y'all are real pissed off. And that doesn't mean that there's not a place to be angry in this, but a lot of you are only angry all week, every week when you come in. A lot of you are, everything's burning and I hate my life and I'm scared. And it just didn't work for me. Well, here I am in this meeting, and there's these people, these guys hugging each other. And I sit in this meeting down next to a guy who is still around with us, and he said, man, you're going to love these guys. This is an awesome room. Well, of course, I instantly hear that, and I'm like, sure, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
That's fine, yeah. Well, obviously, you're to the point in life where you believe that. Because when I first came...
thoroughly brainwashed, don't they?
Well, they do. And so, Dan, and I have to fight this when I'm in meetings, but it's true. Again, I believe it's my disease talking to me. But it's very easy for me to come into meetings and find all the reasons why you should be buying this and I should not.
Yeah.
Okay. That I see the world more clearly than you do. I see the patterns. Okay. And I wish I could just think like y'all, it doesn't matter that some of the brightest people that you'll ever meet in your life are AA. They don't, they just don't see how I see. And I just feel the world better than they feel it. And I see these patterns behind all this. And what this really is you guys are just addicted to something new. Or you guys have just fallen into all of these beliefs. And some of you are just here because you're trying to fit in somewhere and you just want to be cool somewhere. So now you're here, right? Because that's what we do. Yeah. I don't have shit better to do. I got to fit in somewhere. I'm
going to be an all-star any place. I'll be an all-star here.
Right. And so if that's the case, if that's what you've done with your life, and don't get me wrong, I love it here and I'm thrilled here. But again, it's that perspective thing. How many people are out in the world that really say, I'm going to find my niche in the world. I'm going to go find it in an AA meeting, even though I'm not an alcoholic. Yeah. I can't imagine there's a lot of those, right? We jokingly say you don't tend to get here accidentally too often, right? And that certainly was the case for me. But so I'm sitting there, and that guy's just here because he's trying to fit in, and that guy just nobody likes him, so he's just trying to get these people to like him. And those guys are just getting their sheet signed. Most of y'all are wet still. You're still drinking. But something happened in this meeting, Dan, as I'm sitting there and I'm watching you all, and people start sharing about things that make you vulnerable. And that was a horrifically scary revelation to me. I'd spent 37 years of my life being fake, right? And the good Tom and the person that I find to be the real me now, I realize was coming out from time to time. But the reality is my ability to be vulnerable in front of a group of men, regardless of the fact that we are all the same way, is one of the most terrifying things in the world to me. I couldn't handle it. I clammed up a little bit. It makes me nervous. But y'all are doing this, and you're talking, and people are listening to each other share. They're just not waiting for their opportunity to get the chance to talk, which I do all the time, right? And this meeting ends, and I'm a little taken aback. And these guys get up and they hug again. They don't just say the prayer, but they're all hugging and happy to see each other. And what I now look back and realize is I'm starting to see the fact that we have something beyond not drinking, okay? And all of a sudden, it's this brotherhood. There's this kinship. These guys actually like each other. They're not just here because the world has shit on them, and they've got this awful disease, and we're all dying from it, and now our world is cold and dreary and drab. So I guess we're all going to drink coffee in church basements together.
Yeah, like a leper colony.
Sit around here and talk about how our lives suck. And every now and then we'll laugh. I'll tell you a funny story about some dumb crap I did. You do the same. Then we'll all go back to our mundane lives where we just grit through our day, right? Well, I start realizing maybe it's not that way. So we walk out, and the way our meetings are, and we get done with the meeting and everybody talks inside for 10 minutes until they make everybody leave. The guy that runs the meeting, or the church, literally has to force us out. And we go out, and being the great rule followers that we are, we walk right outside the church door and stand there for anywhere for another 30 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the weather, usually.
Usually that's the bigger defining factor of how long we hang out.
So I get out, and as you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, you come up and you start talking to me, and I'm still on stage. I'm still showing you the flash and bang of what you need to hear and see, so that Dan A likes me, right? So I'm acting AA mode, right? But on top of that too, I get a little bit of, hey Tom, you're doing the right thing kind of thing. I'm gonna say some things to Dan. Dan's gonna say, hey, you're going the right way, brother. Keep going in that direction. I can go home. I'll tell my wife, hey, this guy that was running the meeting said I'm doing the right thing. Just stay on the boat with me here. We're gonna make it through. Blah 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 blah. That's what's happening. So just by saying hello to Dan, that's what's going through my brain, is how can I manipulate this situation to get the product that I want so that I can go tell all these people that this is what's happening. So I start giving you some shtick about how I've been going through the program, but I hadn't been doing a whole lot, but I'm going to try this time. And I don't want to misquote you, but I think I've got it. And you looked at me and you said, did you skip the part of the book that says that we work this program completely, thoroughly, and absolutely? Is that right?
That's him.
All right. So that's a little shot across my bow. I'm like, wait a minute. This guy just called in to question, right? You're not supposed to question me. You're supposed to be nice and just say, hey, good job, brother, because that's what we're doing. We just exchange our pleasantries at these AA meetings. You don't really give a damn about how I am or how I'm doing. You're supposed to say thank you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for the buck. And leave. That's what we do. So not to be any further, and I think I'd mentioned you'd known somehow that I was a lawyer, so you said, did you skip the part of the book where it says completely, thoroughly, and absolutely? And I think I kind of sheepishly said, oh, no. And you said, not to be undeterred, you said, don't words mean anything? Well, at this point now, I'm being confronted. I'm like, well, what the hell? I mean, you said, aren't you a fucking lawyer? Right? And so, Don shared on his podcast, Dan, and I've never told you this, but I mean it sincerely, that there was a guy in, I believe, the late either early 80s or late 70s at the 202 Club in Nashville. When Don went, and that guy said, Don, I think you're really getting too smart for this program. And he thought that guy was giving him a compliment. And then that guy went on and said, that's a shame because nobody's ever been too dumb for this program, and we bury you buttholes all the time.
Yep.
Right? And he said that was like a cold hand. The day that you did that to me was like having a cold hand wrapped around me. Because for the first time, it was, you're being a fraud. It's sincerely, at that point, it is, you're in here trying to tell me that you're working a program. You ain't working the program. Don't come in here and tell me you're working the program. You're not working the program. The book says completely, thoroughly, absolutely. Did you skip that part? Is it smart for you to skip that part? Aren't you a lawyer? Don't words mean anything to you? And you weren't, you have a way about you where you'll say something like that and then you'll throw that smile at the end of it. And so it's just like, just so you know, you're like, I'm not trying to be an asshole, but at the end of it, I am still confronting you about this. And you did that. So I didn't take away from it like this guy's a jerk, but that was 13 months ago now. And that absolutely has been fundamental in my life.
I will tell you that standing here today, that was not like stick. That was words that the higher power put into my mouth that time, standing there and like looking back at it. It's something like I sit here today like it's at some level like amazed that come out of me because it really, I don't know how that happens really. I don't know how that happens. I don't.
Well,
I use it today on purpose.
Yeah.
But that time,
just happened.
It just popped.
So and it's amazing that little conversation is something that helped a turning point that changed my life for the better.
Man.
And what's amazing, just like you said, is when I set out these days to try to help another alcoholic, when I set out to try to help somebody else by my own design, hell, I'm going to read page 30. I'm going to read the first paragraph of how it works. I'm going to be able to quote that to somebody today. So when somebody comes in and says something to me, I'm going to quote it to them. And so then I quote it to them, and I bet that's going to say it's never worked.
Yeah.
But when I just do this, and I just talk, somehow it seems to work. I'll say that this is the first time I've ever told my full story, and I can look back on it right now and say, God, I said all kinds of crap there I shouldn't have said the right way. I could have delivered that better. Hell, that ain't going to work. Everybody's going to hear this because my brain right now is saying two things. First thing it's saying is, this ain't nobody ever going to listen to this podcast. It's going to be the worst one ever. It's going to have 2 listens. Nobody. This one's terrible. It's not nearly as good as Christopher's. This sucks. The flip side of my brain saying this is probably going to get more than anybody's ever heard.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
It's going to be the record breaker.
And I'm looking here at your Joe Rogan sticker here. I'm like, you're probably going to send this one on
going
Joe
viral.
Rogan. I'm going to be over on Joe Rogan in the very next heartbeat. It ain't no Joe Rogan want to listen to you. You're terrible. That's the disease, and it's one thing is that disease doesn't stop.
Yeah, it's that egomaniac with this inferiority complex. It's that always at the same time, and I don't remember. I think that come from Billy or Don or somebody like that, or some of that lineage there about simultaneously being above and below you at the same time.
Right?
How we are able to like straddle that.
But I'm never
spectrum like that widely. I'm either rock bottom or best ever.
But what I am not able to do, I am not able to just be your peer. I am not able to be okay with Dan without divine intervention. It's the truth.
Right, yeah.
And so, I got off on a tangent there, but so with kind of coming back to this, so the next week I came back. And when I came back the next week, I was excited. I'm excited to come back, and I come in and I share, and I sit in that back row again because I still haven't graduated to being able to sit up front with anybody. I'm still in the back. I still got to hide. God forbid y'all try to call me out or something. And I decided to raise my hand in a burning desire, and I shared my story. And it's a little deeper than what I shared there on the podcast, and there's some pretty good humor to it. But what I shared, I was 100% honest about. I'd never done that in my life. I had never raised my hand and said, let me show you how dumb what I just did was. Let me show you how I jeopardized my life. Let me show you how dumb the thought processes were that I just went through. And y'all laughed. Everybody laughed and thought it was funny. But at the same time, that laugh wasn't a laugh at me. That laugh was we get it. it's a funny set of circumstances, and anybody would laugh at it.
Yeah.
But nobody goes, "What? There ain't nobody do that."
And it's like the acceptance deal, you know.
Right.
It's like the initiation. It's like, okay, yep,
He's here.
You're in the right chair, brother.
Come on, move out of the back. Come on front now. And we have these things now, Dan. This podcast is an amazing thing. I mentioned to you at the beginning, but I listened from day one to every podcast. I listened to them. We have this sort of group me thing that we do for anybody that's not on that, or anybody that listens to this that's not in the group. It is a 24/7 connection with my brothers. It is not a 24/7 meeting. Now, it is a 24/7 available meeting. If I have an issue, I got a burning desire, I got something that's eating my lunch, and it's not even alcohol related, I get on there, and it goes from joking on each other and making funny photoshops to instantly everybody drops what they're doing, and you're the most important person on the group me, and we talk. It's been fundamental for me. This connection that I've gotten with this group has given me what Don was telling me I always needed, which was, he said, you've got to figure out a way to build your life around AA. You have to put your life into AA, not try to fit AA into your life.
Right. And that's the compliment that he gave during his podcast to our group that we do. Right. He said, better than anybody he's seen.
Well, and that's, so Dan, my best friend in the world came out of these rooms, out of this room, who did a podcast a year ago and mentioned me on that when he just met me, all right? And y'all give us hell about it, but it's the truth. That outside from that one, I would then say probably my next 7 best friends are out of this room.
Yeah.
And it's not been a function of I'm going to go try to make that happen. It's been this thing where I don't act like I'm just me. I don't care if you think that the band I think is the coolest band in the world that hadn't done anything for 13 years and was cool 1997. I don't care. I wear the same shoes I want to wear. I wear the jeans I want to wear. I don't get dressed up before meetings. I don't care. Sometimes I'm in work clothes, but it doesn't matter. I have, I have gotten on. That group me was important. I remember a year ago, right at a year ago now, I was sitting in a trial, and I got on that group me, and I mentioned to everybody, I said, I feel weird. I don't know what is going on. All these things are happening to me, and I'm reacting this way. What is going on? And somebody said, those are feelings. You're having feelings. And I had no idea what the hell that was. That stuff, it allows me to be vulnerable. I love hugging. I love those meetings.
Me too, man.
Shane and I, Shane's done the podcast too. Shane's a big old SOB too, and every week we try to kill each other, see who can hug each other the hardest. And it's love, man. It's loving each other as much as we can absolutely love another human being.
Yep.
And that connection has gone for me from I have to pretend to be somebody I am not, to fit in to who you think I might be, to get your fake friendship, your fake love, or your fake admiration. And I say the admiration part because that's what my brain wanted. It didn't even want acceptance. It wanted you to think I was amazing. To real, right? And it's been as rewarding to me as any drink or drug ever went.
Amen.
I went, Dan, I came to AA to stop drinking. I am here for you to teach me how to stop drinking. You ain't drinking several years. How the hell did you do that? That's all it was. I'm going to go live my life how it is right now, but I'm just going to stop drinking. Because everything's great, right? Well, it wasn't. I had no idea, and it was true. I'd hear all that crap when people would be like, you got to deal with why you're drinking. I drink because I party. What the hell are you talking about? I'm not sad. Everything's fine. I remember on my 4-step, when my sponsor said, write down all your resentments. Dude, I don't resent anybody. I love everybody. Everything's fine. I sat down and wrote it for a little bit. I fucking hate everybody. I hated everybody in AA. It was funny that in this, it sort of just developed where I started doing this work and I had this bond with you all that allowed me a safe place to unpack these feelings that are ongoing, this life that I live. And now I've coupled that with living the life with these people. That, my wife's friends with the wives, our kids are friends. We go, on trips together. We have meetings together. We go to dinners together. All this stuff, man.
Concerts.
And by doing that stuff, it has created a life where I wouldn't even say I fit my life into AA. You talk about a psychic change, like it just switched. And so it went from I'm here to stop drinking to I legitimately don't want to drink. And it's not fear. It's that what I used it for, I don't need it anymore.
Yep.
I just don't need it. I am not foolish about this. I know that the physical allergy to alcohol and drugs is still there. It never goes away. I guard my sobriety like I would guard my child. I will not put myself in a position where my disease that I don't believe ever gets weaker, that I don't believe ever wants to stop to get me drunk. Don says, and I love this analogy, that alcoholism is a perfect sociopath. It's not trying to kill me. It doesn't care. It just wants to drink. So it's not out there saying, come on, Tom, let's die. It doesn't want to die. It wants to drink.
Yeah.
But it doesn't care if I die or you die or anyone else dies. It'll throw everything against the wall to get me to drink.
Yeah.
That doesn't change. That is always there. And I will never trust that I am on my own capable of stopping that, because it throws lie after lie at me.
Yep.
And as I told you earlier, from my belief is I don't see the world right. So if I'm on my own and I'm trusting my perspective on everything, what happens is sooner or later I'm going to believe one of those things that thing throws up there. And in my case, I know what's going to happen.
Yep, I feel the same way. That's part of the reason why I let my anonymity drop on things. That's the levels of accountability in my life that I feel are that put more money in my insurance policy.
Right.
And I just want as much of that as I can possibly get. And it's not like at any level, any kind of white knuckling, and however this stuff come about, I don't know how I got this ability to do these podcasts and to that group me thing was landed into my lap to start doing that. And the different ways I get to participate in my recovery, it looks a little bit to some people like it's something I was doing like for everybody else. But really, I'm doing it for me. Yeah. No. I am keeping me sober. You know how much accountability I have by putting my ass onto here every week in and out? And you were saying something, what I heard when you said it, and you come in there in a meeting and you poured out them true things of what's going on, because I had the exact same thing, man. I was pretending. You were saying, you were using a different word. I was pretending to be sober.
Right.
I was pretending to be sober for a while, and I need y'all to see that. And I'd come into meetings and tell you I was fine, and I would do the thing like you said, because I've been around and I had some recovery, so I could talk some shit, and I could parrot back the stuff. And one day I couldn't, and I come into the meeting and I dumped out and got vulnerable. That's the word you used earlier, and that when you were able to come in and tell the truth finally.
Right.
And man, how freeing that was to go, okay, here it is. Blah!
Right.
And you weren't ridiculed about it. Matter of fact, what usually happens is they actually rally around you.
Yeah.
And then you get that thing you were looking for.
Right.
Right?
Right.
That admiration and that.
Right.
But it was like from a completely different direction, and you thought you'd get it.
Hell yeah.
I didn't think I'd have told this story a long time ago if I thought it.
That's right.
What was I sitting on it for?
Right.
And there's right before what a lot of people read for the closing, and then I beat this drum like crazy, is there's a line in there that says he will help you create the fellowship you crave. And that's what I was craving all my life. And that whole thing about earlier about, that this stuff changed the way I felt.
Right.
Right. And what I had to do is come in here and figure out why I felt the need to change the way I felt.
Right.
That was what, and I think I'm stopping drinking, but I'm not, and I couldn't hear that for a while. That changing the way I feel thing, I couldn't hear that at all. That's everything seems to be pretty clear in the rearview mirror.
Yep, but it wasn't.
But as I'm walking through it, I have no idea about the accident that I got vulnerable that day, and why that day I did that. I got a little bit. I would like to philosophize about why that happened, and I think I got a little bit of an idea about it. But it's all this stuff about walking this path and how. A story's there to lay out and play out, and I watched you grab
That's the other thing that happened. And I'll just say from my perspective, that night that I was talking to you, I was talking to a guy who really didn't want to get sober.
Right.
And I'm just not the guy that stands there and listens to you bullshit me.
That's right.
I mean, I'm just not, you
Right.
know, and if you're not doing the deal, that's why you're not getting anything. That's why you're not seeing any relief. That's why it's not happening for you. And it's just that simple.
Yeah.
Like I said before, this is not that program of some get it, some don't. This is a program some do and some don't. And
Right.
it's just that simple. And when somebody stands there and you're bullshitting me, and can't piss on my boots and tell me it's raining, brother.
That's right.
And so I just didn't, and I really don't give a shit anymore, you know, and I still didn't, you know. I mean, if it hurts your feelings, we got to be telling the truth in these rooms. And you said that you come in there and get your bottom powdered. We do. We come into meetings to get our bottoms powdered a lot of times.
Yeah.
And you'll get told you're doing the right. You're in the right place.
Right.
You know. No, maybe you might be in the right place, but you're not doing what it takes to get what these guys have got.
Right.
And but I remember seeing, boom. It was like a switch was flipped.
Yep.
And then you could come in and you shared and you invested yourself into the group. You know, there was no more, you know, it was actually, you could actually see Tom take all of his chips, put them in a big fucking pile, and shoved them in the middle of the table and said, there they are. And you never have looked back. And, you know, and when somebody does that, you see what you see happen out of you. Right. I mean, just boom. I mean, freedom comes quickly, and they get well, and you're like a completely different dude than the night I met you.
It was, so Dan, it's amazing. When I walked in, none of this was calculated. I didn't come in and say, all right, well, I'm going to get spiritual and I'm going to have a deeper connection with my higher power and I'm going to be best friends with these guys and this is going to reshape my life. As I said, I just went in there to get people shut the hell up.
Yeah, my tail feathers were on fire and I need them put out.
Right. So just whatever gets me there, let's go do that. And we'll go I've been playing the game my whole life. Let's go play it some more.
Yep.
And something happened, man, because y'all were vulnerable that night. I went in and just something happened where I thought, you know, everything I've been doing is not working. It's just not working. So like the metaphor you're using of pushing the chips in, I just walked in and said, what the hell? If I try this and it doesn't work, but I'll tell you what I had absolutely committed to. If I'm going all in, and if this doesn't work, then I absolutely am at the spot where you were to where we're talking about, which is I'm conceding to this life. I'm gonna be the guy that drinks and drugs, and I'm probably gonna crash and burn. But I've read enough of the book. I'll be one of those that are just I'm incapable of getting it. I'm constitutionally incapable. I'm just that guy, and it's because of this god awful gift that I have of feeling the world so much, and I'm just so different than everybody. But you know what? Damn it, I'm gonna try. And and at that point, I said, you know what? I'm not gonna have to look back. I can say I tried. It's just not me. And I joke about it, but it's true, man. When you talk about me latching on, man, I latched on.
You did.
People said you want to go to coffee? I went to coffee. We went, we had.
We never seen you before, and then you couldn't shake your ass.
I wouldn't leave. I get on the group meet, I'm instantly talking to everyone all the time, and I got questions, and I don't ask questions about anything in the world, and all of a sudden I'm asking y'all questions, and I'm admitting when I do stuff like I read the 4-step. And I go do a 4-step and I only do 3 columns instead of 4 like an idiot because I didn't read the book. And even though I read the book, but
you
words
showed up
didn't
at your
mean
5th
anything.
step, didn't you?
And so I came in, but I came into that room and I said, that's what I did. And even my sponsor, who I had told the story to you, then turned it around on me and said, did you not read that there's a 4th column? Don't words mean anything? Aren't you a fucking lawyer? And he doesn't cuss, but he said, aren't you a lawyer? Which was funny, but it's that kind of stuff. So I now have a place where I come share that. And I share it because y'all are going to laugh. And it's a place where I'm vulnerable and I get to say, hey, this guy that thinks he's the smartest guy in the world, I'm going to go show y'all something I did that was next level stupid. Yeah. That I'm reading just 2 pages I got to read here. And I skip the whole part that's important about my role in this whole thing, right?
Taking the armor off, I could not take my armor off. I could not let you see that I was anything less than perfect.
The 4-step, and I know that's where we lose a lot of people, but that's why I'd never do a 4-step. So I've probably done 5 third steps. And my sponsor believes,
sorta.
Yeah. Well, I have taken the action that the 3rd step suggests that we do. Yeah. I have gotten on my knees with another alcoholic and said the words in the 3rd step prayer. Did I ever mean them? Hell no, I didn't mean them. I remember distinctly telling them sometimes, be like, this is such a crock of shit.
Yeah.
This is a waste of my time, but I'm going to do it. Yeah. But I'd never do the 4-step, not only because I was too scared to unpack it, but hell, I'm not doing any work because I'm not any committed to this thing either.
Yeah, right.
And, doing the 4-step, starting to do some of those things, it really started. Yeah. I didn't understand how any of this stuff would work. And if
we
I
really don't.
I don't. If I had waited until I believed that this was going to work, and to this day, today, I still ask my core of friends. I still ask y'all. I still ask everybody. In particular courses of action in my life, what should I do? And that's a miracle in and of itself.
Yeah.
Because if you'd have asked me 2 years ago, let alone 10, to ask another person, A, for help, or B, to give me any input on what you think I should do, you go live your life, I'll live mine. I joke in meetings, but if my wife told me to turn right and I was driving, I'll turn left just to show you what it looks like so that I don't have to do what you tell me to do, which is invites chaos directly into the car with you.
Yeah, that goes right with that Bob Earl thing about when you bring me something, I instantly reject it.
Yeah,
I just do.
No,
because whatever you got can't be okay. It can't be okay for me.
It can't.
It's not.
No. So
that's the way I felt about this stuff when they first started handing this stuff to me. Until I hit that jumping off point. Until I hit that point that however that happens, it's interesting, and it's another one of them things about not knowing how this program works. That when that switch gets flipped, it's evident
right
in the rearview mirror, but otherwise, you can't make it happen for somebody.
No. Well, and that's looking back on this, Dan, and it's exciting that I am where I am in a year. I am further spiritually, emotionally, peacefully in my life than I would have told you I would have ever gotten, right? And as you say, I smell more, man. But there's more to this than I look at not drinking and not drugging as the small price to pay for my opportunity to dig into something that is truly the root of what I'm supposed to be.
Yep.
And I don't know what that is.
Well, now it's open to you. That's the cool thing. And I tell people that, as they're walking in the door, and they're working these steps with me, and, and it's rough in the beginning because they don't believe it and they don't want to, and they're doing it sometimes begrudgingly, but they're doing it.
Right.
That someday you're going to look back, man, and you're going to treasure this moment of doing this work and realize how that changed your trajectory. Exactly. And all of a sudden the world becomes your oyster. It really does if you allow it to be, man, because you can, I'm like a little kid today.
Sure.
About what's available to me, and I don't even know what it is. Christmas is coming.
Well, right.
And I know it. And all I got to do is continue to do this stuff. It's that limitless load that will pay dividends for the rest of my life as long as I continue to give it all away.
One of us says, and I love it and I steal it, it's like having a cheat code.
It is.
It really is. I mean, it's in my dealings with my colleagues, with my clients, with my wife, my kids, with everything. When I apply these principles via step 12, right? I apply these principles in all of my affairs. I will be damned that it doesn't work with a 100% success rate. Now, it may not be 100% success of producing the exact outcome that I wanted,
right, yeah,
but it produces the right outcome literally every time. And yet, being the great alcoholic that I am, I still will plenty of times say, all right, well, that way worked. Well, hold on, let me take these reins back. I'm going to do this my way for a little bit. Do it, chaos. Well, okay, let's go back. And it's amazing that just using this simple program and these simple tools, putting these and applying them to my life has made my life wonderful. And I have now had, I think it's the coolest thing ever. I'd mentioned this on our group meet, but I posted on Facebook. My wife posted on Facebook my 1 year recovery. And in that time frame, I had a friend that was a hardcore drinking, drugging buddy of mine reach out to me again. And I don't know that he's ever taken it seriously, but he didn't reach out to me and say, what are you doing? Come on, you wimp. Let's get back out there and have fun. Nor did he say, hey, you're in the wrong spot. What are you doing? You don't really have a problem. How most of us were, at least I was that guy, that the ones that you look out at and you're like, that guy's bad, those people were telling me that I was bad. The ones that the rest of society says, that guy's got a drinking problem, that guy would look at me and be like, you drink too much, right? one of those guys reached out to me and asked me just, what are you doing and how are you doing this and how's a program of attraction, right?
Yep.
And I'm so blessed for that.
Yeah.
That is a promise. I don't know that it becomes anything, but that's the first time in my life, I mean that I have done something that I am proud of, that is based on my actions, not just, an academic success or an athletic success where I had to work hard. But at the end of the day, it's not me doing the right thing that got somebody to notice it, right?
Man.
And so I did the right thing. And in doing the right thing, somebody reached out to me for help. That's never happened.
Yeah.
I have never had that. And that's the guy I've always wanted to be. That's the adulation I want. That's the praise I want.
It really is, and that's what we're looking. That really is where that is. You're exactly right, man. That is exactly what we're looking for.
And when I have that now,
Have that purpose and that be a valuable person and to be able to impact somebody's life, even 1, 2, whatever it is, that ripple effect that we get to do because
Right.
we've put these principles into our lives. It's unfathomable the amount of people that are touched because of one person doing this.
well, it's why I wanted to do the podcast, and it's why my anonymity is not as important to me as it once was.
Yeah.
Because my willingness to have my picture on Facebook might have created that for somebody.
Yep.
And if that truly makes somebody's life better by me saying that I'm not ashamed to be sober. I was a long time ago. Of course, I wasn't sober either. I was ashamed to say I was associated with the program. I won't even say I was working the program because I wasn't. But now I'm proud. I have no qualms whatsoever. If you ask me on the street, I'm not. I carry my AA book and I'll read it in a Starbucks as quickly as I read anything else.
Yep.
I don't have any problems with it at all.
Well, you keep my point, and just to echo what you said, if I keep this really close to my chest, it actually prohibits the number of people I can reach.
Right.
I have to have this out a little bit, or else because you're not going to come knock on my door asking what happened if you don't know what happened.
That's right.
And so if I don't allow myself to be out here a little bit, I lose that opportunity to help other people.
And I understand, Dan. I get the traditions, and I shouldn't say by any means I'm not an expert. I wouldn't even say I'm well versed in it. I get that there's a lot of attraction by setting an example, by us not promoting. And I'm not suggesting we should be screaming this from the hilltops.
AA is putting commercials on the radio right now. Some guy called me the other day, and I've heard him for a while. I've known about it, but I mean that's. It's an opportunity because people are out there suffering and need help. And this is one of the, there's some other ways to get sober. There's bound to be. I don't know any of them.
Well, that's exactly what you're saying. Exactly what you're saying is, and my grand sponsor said that, which is, as soon as I master the big book, I'll move on to the other ways, to do this. And everybody always opens the door for something outside of the 12 steps to be the way that we can get sober. Oh, okay. But I tried every way I knew how to try. I tried private counseling. I tried, the book talks about taking more exercise. Never understood the taking a trip or not taking a trip part. I've never not taken a trip to be sober. But neither here nor there. I've done everything you can do. When I, as you said, pushed my chips in at that meeting, when I said, I'm going to try it your way 100%, because damn it, I really did. I tried every way I can do it. I did it in every change of alcohol, time of day, drugs, no drugs, at work, not at work, home, not at home, anything that I could possibly do to try to make this thing work, I tried, and it won't work. So, all right, I'm in, and I'll try your way.
Yep.
And it was the best thing I've ever done, man.
Yeah.
And if you had asked me, was it going to be, I would have said no. If you'd asked me if it was going to work, I would have said no. If you'd have asked me, do I even want the life I have right now, I would have said no.
Yeah.
And now I have it, and I wouldn't give it away for the world, man.
Yeah, man.
And so I sincerely hope. That's the reason that I don't need the anonymity as much, because to me, the price for my sobriety is to give it away. And it is for somebody else to maybe be impacted somehow about what I say. And that's the thing I have to keep telling my mind when when that part of my brain saying, you're fucking all this up, Tom. You talk for a living, and now you're in here babbling about all this stuff. Nobody's going to get anything out of this. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But I'm not going to be the reason that it didn't get out there.
Yeah,
That's
right.
my responsibility, is to try. And if it helps somebody, then awesome. I pray and I hope that it does, because you did for me, other people have for me. And if you hadn't gone to that meeting that night because you were tired, if you had chosen, I'm not going to talk to that new guy because I know all these other guys, hell, they're more fun to talk to. And like you said, that guy doesn't look like he wants to be sober. You'd have chosen any of those reasons and you hadn't come over to me. Or if you'd have decided, like you said, just to pat my ass and said, good job, Tom. You're doing the right thing. Just keep going. I wouldn't be here. And so, I hope to be that for somebody somehow, some way.
Oh man, it's a blessing, and it's really an honor to have those kind of words said about me.
Yeah.
Because I can't, that does not compute.
Right.
The 12 steps was a pinhole of light in a big black box. It was a Hail Mary pass for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was the last thing, ditch effort. It's like, okay, I'm going to prison. Mm-hmm. There's a pinhole of light right there. There's no other light anywhere else.
Right.
Nothing. Everything else is complete darkness. That looks like the only potential escape route. I don't think I can fit through it. I don't think it'll work. I don't know. But that's all that's available, apparently.
Right.
And so we will do that. And it ended up changing my life. And then I get to have this impact on these other people. And I'd have never, again, that fills me. I tear up talking about it because it fills me beyond my understanding to be able to have that and be, if you come into contact with me prior to this program, I promise you I had a negative effect on you.
Yeah.
And now I'm wandering around this big blue marble having positive effects on people. And that's unreal to me.
That's I'll tell you, Dan, that's the fact that I shared this with one of our brothers too, as an example for me to be this way. And I love this guy dearly, and he knows it. But my grandfather used to always say that you want to be a benefactor to society and not a burden. And I told him that he's my role model for what I think that truly is. And this is a guy that he's now 3 years, so a little bit over 3 years sober. He would have certainly told you he's not a benefactor to society at all. And now he's my role model for that with my dad gone. I say that I hope that I get to start being that, because if you had known me several years ago, unless you purely judged a human being by their ability to have a job that created money, or somebody that loved his kids and cared for them, and I don't mean that that's not worthwhile, but I also would tell you I wasn't nearly the present father that I am now. But as an aside, unless you judged me for that, you would have never considered me a benefactor to society. Yeah, I took advantage of what I could when I could and how I could just to get where I wanted to get. And it didn't matter who I stepped on to get there. And now, from time to time, I'm not the most important thing in the world to me. Yeah, and that's a big deal, brother.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. That's probably your lull.
My lull?
Yeah, so you
I talk about the sigh.
The sigh. There it is. I called it a lull.
Yeah. It's pretty close to the same thing. Yeah, man. I love hearing that story. I love to see the excitement. That's the other thing, is that's what we see when we're in that room, and these people that we run with, is there's an excitement for life, and you exhibit that. You did not. Mm-hmm. And you do today, and that's what makes people want this cheat code.
Right.
And this cheat code is available to everybody. I do believe it is available to everybody, whether no matter what you happen to be dealing with in your life. If you want some more in your life, if your life has some room to be a little bit better, whether if it's from alcohol, drugs, overeating, gambling, or just I know that certain people just suffer from this thing called like this low level misery. Mm-hmm. This unhappiness, this just can't find a way to feel like they have a purpose in life. This cheat code will do that. If you will do the work, it will do that. And we're seeing it happen. Before I completely close up, you got any final thoughts you want to throw at the wall?
I just
concluders.
What's that?
I call them concluders. I steal that from Steve Ranella, one of my other favorite podcast people.
I would say it was. I've had a blast doing this. So again, it would tell you, I love the fact that my perspective is completely off. It was intimidating, and I say it's intimidating because I prepare all my speeches. I talk for a living, but I know what I'm going to say before I start talking. I didn't prep 1 ounce of this. I came in and sat down. And that makes it come from the heart. And I would tell you that if for anybody that doubts doing it, yet again, I find that my perspective on what this is going to be and how this is going to be and what impact it will have is completely wrong. This was awesome and a great time, man. I love you. I'm thrilled that you do this.
It is fun.
It was fun to do. And maybe my ego has gotten a little bit better. And the only thing I will tell that for is this, is that when I used to be excited to tell my story. And the most exciting part of that story to me would have been to tell you about what I was like. Because I'd tell you all the saga and all the great things that I'd ever done and all that. And I don't know if you noticed or not, it took a while to get through it. But I didn't have much excitement telling you about any of that crap. Man, there's not much emotion behind any of that. I wanted to get through that as quick as I can. The excitement, the love, the happiness isn't what it was like or what I was like, and it isn't what happened. It's what I'm like now, man, and I'm eternally grateful for that.
Yeah, juice.
Yeah,
juice.
Yes, sir.
So we have this little, we'll close this thing up. Tom, thank you very much. Can't tell you how much you mean to me personally. I like to use this term as we throw around that collateral damage term, and I like to use a collateral benefit term. Is that every time somebody sits across this table from me, I get to know them better.
Yeah,
and that means a lot to me, because that's what I'm trying to do today, is get to know my brothers and my other fellow humans on this earth better.
Yeah.
And I get a chance to do that with you folks that come here and sit here. So thank you for honoring me with that. Yeah. I learned a lot today. I feel like you know somebody pretty good.
Uh-huh.
And then I know them better a lot when you sit and do this. And there's a lock. There's something happens emotionally when I sit with somebody on across here that I really dig. So DTMWW.net. Woodwork and handyman thing here in the metropolitan area. Spiritualunderground.org. Let's hold up for just a second on that one. 12-Step Spiritual Recovery by James Christopher Cone. You can find that on Amazon. It comes in a few different versions. Got any questions about that, you can contact me. That's going to be kind of like that call to action here at the end. The music around here is by Darren Frank and a number of other people in recovery. I know I have his, permission and Jesse's permission to talk about them. Jesse did the production work mostly on it, and some of the instruments and stuff. He did some of the other things on those songs, and I kind of landed on this one that is "Let Go and Fly," because I think that's the name of that song, and that's it's cool. What I like that, and I love the tune, and I like that premise, and that's what we're doing, letting go, and we're flying.
Yeah,
we really are. So on the final note, hey, if you want this cheat code, it's available to you. I would maybe encourage you, or maybe even challenge you, if you want to email me at that spiritualunderground.org, where the show notes are at, and contact me, and I can help you find that cheat code and talk to you about it. I'd be more than happy to discuss it and help point you in directions where we can get this cheat code in the hands of more people. Lord knows the planet can use it. A lot of people are suffering, and this is a set of tools. There's a lot of tools out there, and this is a very effective one. So you can send me an email on the cheat code if you want it, and we'll talk about it. We'll close up like always with, hey, if you're not enjoying your recovery, if you're not having a blast being sober, it's your own damn fault. And thank you all for allowing me and Tom to participate in our recovery in this manner today. Peace out.
Tried to be just who they wanted. Always tried to do everything they said. Only did the things they would approve of. Like locked away all your dreams inside your head. Year after year you try to be a good girl. They never failed to point out when you were bad. Stuck to the program like a robot. Became a trophy for mom and dad. But inside you want more. Everything you've been waiting for. Looking for that open door. So every day in your bed, and your heart just keeps saying, let go and fly. Let go and fly. Spread your wings to the sky. Let go and fly. Ever since